Ilara Vance pushed through the grand oak doors of Crestwood Academy, her well-worn canvas shoes scuffing softly on the polished marble floor. At 17, she was a study in quiet contrasts. Slender frame, dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense braid, and clothes that spoke of practicality rather than privilege. Her father's work at the local fabrication plant barely covered their modest rent in the Ironwood district, leaving little for the designer labels that seemed to be the uniform of this affluent suburban institution. She gripped her class schedule, her gaze sweeping over the ornate hallway numbers as students, seemingly oblivious to her presence, flowed around her like a vibrant river. The transition from the gritty, bustling streets of her old neighborhood felt like stepping onto an alien planet. Here, teenagers navigated the parking lot in luxury cars, their backpacks alone costing more than Ilara's family spent on groceries in a month. Lost charity case? The voice, sharp and laced with condescension, cut through the hum of conversation. Ilara turned to find three impeccably dressed girls blocking her path, led by a striking blonde with a perfectly sculpted face and eyes that held a chilling glint. "I'm Serafina Thorne, and this is my academy. You look like you took a wrong turn at the city limits." Ilara's jaw tightened. She recognized the tone, the predatory gleam. It was a familiar prelude, but she kept her voice level, devoid of emotion. "Just trying to find room 312. "Oh, how quaint. She's polite." Serafina's companions, a fiery redhead named Briar and a sleek brunette called Willow, snickered on cue. "Let me guess, your dad works with his hands? Something unrefined?" The accuracy of the barb stung, but Ilara had learned long ago that any flicker of vulnerability was an invitation for further attack. She'd moved 7 times in 5 years, following her father's pursuit of stable employment, and each new school presented the same gauntlet. Her strategy was simple: blend in, keep her head down, survive until graduation. "Excuse me," Ilara murmured, attempting to sidestep them. Serafina shifted, effectively sealing her escape. "Not so fast. We have a little tradition at Crestwood. Newcomers need to understand the pecking order." She surveyed Ilara with theatrical disdain. "And you, darling, are firmly at the bottom." What Serafina couldn't know was that Ilara's quiet demeanor was a shield, not a sign of fear. For the past decade, she'd trained relentlessly at her Uncle Cale's boxing gym, wherever they landed. Cale Vance, a former amateur champion whose career was cut short by injury, had taught his niece that true power wasn't about size, but precision and resolve. Yet Ilara had also learned the painful consequences of unleashing that power. At her previous school, she'd hospitalized a bully who'd cornered her in an empty classroom. The incident led to expulsion, legal entanglements, and her father's desperate decision to move them again. She'd promised him she wouldn't fight, no matter the provocation. "I understand," Ilara said simply, adjusting her backpack and walking away. Serafina's triumphant laughter echoed behind her, a mocking anthem of her humiliation. The rest of the morning blurred into a series of introductions and syllabus readings. By lunchtime, the whispers had already spread. The new girl, the poor one, who'd been too timid to stand up to Serafina Thorne. Ilara sat alone in a quiet corner of the grand cafeteria, picking at a dry sandwich while a cacophony of privileged chatter swirled around her. "That's her," she overheard someone whisper. "Serafina made her cry in the hall." Ilara hadn't cried, but she didn't bother to correct the narrative. Falsehoods often solidified into truth in the high school ecosystem, and she'd learned not to waste energy on every misperception. She was lost in thought when a lunch tray clattered loudly beside her table. Looking up, she saw a slender boy with unruly sandy hair and thick-rimmed glasses scrambling to collect scattered food. His face was crimson with embarrassment as other students pointed and giggled. Sorry," he mumbled, fumbling with napkins. "I'm such a mess." Without hesitation, Ilara knelt to help him. "It's all right," she said, handing him a fallen apple. "Happens to everyone." The boy looked at her with wide-eyed surprise, as if kindness from a stranger was a foreign concept. "You're the new student, right? I'm Leo Finch. Most people just call me Leo." "Ilara Vance." She helped him gather the last of his meal. "Don't mind them. They'll find something else to amuse themselves with in 5 minutes." Leo offered a grateful smile, and Ilara noticed the genuine warmth in his eyes behind the lenses. There was a gentle spirit about him that reminded her of her father, who'd always taught her to treat everyone with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. "Thanks," Leo said. "You're probably the first person who's been decent to me all semester." Before Ilara could respond, Serafina's voice sliced through the cafeteria's din. How precious. The outcast found another outcast to commiserate with. Serafina approached their table with her usual retinue, augmented by a few burly athletes eager to curry favor. "Leo, didn't I tell you to avoid normal people? You might contaminate them with your uniqueness." "Leave him alone," Ilara said quietly, rising to her feet. Serafina's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Oh, this is rich. The scared little mouse thinks she can protect the Academy's biggest oddball." She turned to address the rapidly growing crowd of onlookers. "Everyone, behold, our new charity case fancies herself a hero." One of the athletes, a hulking figure with a shaved head, stepped closer to Ilara. "You heard Serafina. Back off, slum dog." The derogatory slur hung in the air, a sharp, invisible blow. Ilara's hands instinctively clenched into fists, muscle memory from countless hours in the gym surging through her. But she forced herself to breathe, to recall the solemn promise she'd made to her father. "I'm not looking for trouble," she stated evenly. "Too bad," Serafina sneered. "Trouble just found you." She snatched Ilara's juice carton and upended it over her head, drenching her hair and clothes. The cafeteria erupted in a mix of laughter and gasps. Someone was already recording on their phone. Ilara stood there dripping, the sticky liquid running down her face and onto the floor. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to retaliate, to show these entitled brats the true meaning of consequence. But she pictured her father, working grueling double shifts to secure their new apartment. The promise she'd made. The fragile dream of college that would shatter if she faced expulsion again. So, she said nothing. She simply picked up her backpack and walked out of the cafeteria, leaving behind a room full of mocking laughter and the image of Leo Finch watching her, his eyes filled with something that might have been admiration. The afternoon brought fresh indignities. Someone had taped a crude outsider sign to her locker. In chemistry, Willow accidentally knocked Ilara's notebook into a sink, overflowing with murky water. During physical education, Briar tripped her during a relay race, sending her sprawling across the gymnasium floor. Each incident was subtle enough to be dismissed as an accident, yet perfectly calculated to maximize humiliation while minimizing direct culpability. Ilara endured it all in silence, cleaning up messes and ignoring the snickers. But the breaking point arrived during 7th period study hall. Ilara sat alone in the library, attempting to salvage her ruined homework assignments, when Serafina and her entourage surrounded her table. "We need to talk," Serafina said, her voice deceptively sweet. "You see, I've been thinking about our little cafeteria misunderstanding, and I realized I might have been a bit hasty." Ilara looked up warily. In her experience, bullies rarely developed consciences. "So here's how it's going to work," Serafina continued. "Every day you're going to bring me 20 credits. Consider it a social contribution. In exchange, I'll ensure no one bothers you anymore." "I don't have 20 credits a day," Ilara said honestly. Serafina's smile turned predatory. "Then you'd better find a way. Ask your father to work some extra shifts at the plant. Or maybe you can clean houses after school." She leaned closer. "Because if you don't pay up, Things are going to get much, much worse for you." "And what if I refuse?" Ilara asked quietly. "Then you'll end up like Leo Finch, 3 years of absolute misery until you graduate, if you even make it that far." As if summoned by his name, Leo appeared around the corner, carrying a precarious stack of books. Serafina's attention immediately shifted to him. "Perfect timing," she purred. "Leo, come here. I want to show our new friend what happens to people who don't follow the rules." Leo froze, his face draining of color. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Your existence is offense enough," Serafina declared. She nodded to the hulking athlete, who stepped forward and snatched Leo's books, sending them flying across the library floor. Papers scattered everywhere as Leo desperately tried to gather them. "Please," Leo pleaded, his voice cracking. "Those are due tomorrow." "Should have thought of that before you decided to be such a freak," Serafina laughed. The athlete grabbed Leo's backpack and emptied it, stomping on his expensive graphing calculator and snapping his new glasses in half. Leo fell to his knees, trying to salvage what he could of his destroyed belongings. "Stop," Ilara said, standing up. "Sit down," Serafina commanded, "unless you want to join him." But Ilara was remembering other scenes, other victims. A girl at her old school who'd attempted to take her own life after months of relentless torment. A boy who'd simply stopped attending class after bullies posted humiliating photos of him online. Leo's gentle smile from earlier, the first genuine kindness she'd received all day. "I said stop," Ilara repeated, her voice now imbued with a steel that hadn't been there before. Serafina scoffed. "What are you going to do about it? Cry? Run to your daddy?" The athlete kicked Leo's broken calculator across the floor. "Maybe we should give the slumdog the same treatment." That was the precise moment Ilara's control finally shattered. Years of rigorous training, months of suppressed fury, and a day's worth of accumulated indignities coalesced into a pure, incandescent rage. She moved with startling speed, closing the distance to the athlete in 2 fluid steps. Her right hand shot out in a textbook jab, connecting with his solar plexus and doubling him over. Before he could recover, she pivoted, delivering a devastating uppercut that sent him crashing into a bookshelf with a resounding thud. Serafina's other followers recoiled in shock, but Serafina herself stood frozen, her mouth agape in disbelief. "You want to know what I'm going to do about it?" Ilara asked, advancing on her. "I'm going to teach you what happens when you pick on the wrong person." Serafina finally found her voice. "You can't touch me. My father is on the academy board." "Your father isn't here," Ilara said. She grabbed Serafina by the shoulders and lifted her off the ground, slamming her against the wall. "But I am." The impact knocked the breath out of Serafina, and for the first time in her pampered life, she looked genuinely terrified. "Please," she gasped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean what?" Ilara interrupted. "You didn't mean to dump juice on me. You didn't mean to destroy his things. You didn't mean to make his life a living hell for 3 years. She released Serafina, who slumped to the floor, gasping for air. But Ilara wasn't finished. Briar tried to flee, but Ilara caught her arm and spun her around. "Where are you going?" Ilara asked. "I thought you enjoyed watching people suffer." She swept Briar's legs out from under her, sending her tumbling to the ground. Willow tried to help her friend up, but Ilara was already there, grabbing both girls and knocking their heads together with a dull thud. The athlete was attempting to regain his feet, but Ilara planted her foot firmly in his chest and shoved him back down. "Stay down," she commanded. "We're not done yet." She turned back to Serafina, who was still cowering against the wall. "You want to know what my father does? He doesn't just work with metal. He taught me how to fix people too. People who think they're strong because they can prey on the vulnerable." Ilara grabbed Serafina's designer handbag and emptied its contents onto the floor, stomping on her expensive makeup and phone. "How does it feel?" she asked, "having someone destroy your possessions?" "Stop, please," Serafina whimpered. "I'll leave you alone, I promise." You'll leave everyone alone, Ilara corrected. Not just me, Leo, and every other student you've tormented. Because if you don't, I'll come back and finish what we started here. She surveyed the scene of destruction. The 4 bullies sprawled across the library floor like broken puppets. Word of this would spread through the academy within hours. There would be consequences, likely severe ones. But as she looked at Leo, who was staring at her with a mixture of awe and profound gratitude, she realized she didn't care. "Are you all right?" she asked him, helping him to his feet. Leo nodded, still speechless. His broken glasses hung askew, but his eyes shone with something that looked like dawning hope. "Good," Ilara said. She turned back to Serafina one last time. "Remember what I said. This is your only warning." As she walked out of the library, she could hear Serafina's ragged sobs behind her. The sound should have made her feel guilty, but all she felt was a deep, quiet satisfaction. For the first time since arriving at Crestwood Academy, she felt like herself again. The next morning, the academy buzzed with feverish rumors about the library incident. Serafina Thorne had been found unconscious with a concussion. 3 other students had been hospitalized with various injuries. No one could quite believe that the quiet, unassuming Ilara Vance had single-handedly subdued 4 upperclassmen. But the evidence was undeniable. Security footage showed everything, and witnesses confirmed that Serafina's crew had initiated the confrontation. For once, the bullies couldn't play the victim or claim self-defense. Ilara was summoned to Headmaster Albright's office immediately upon arrival. She'd braced herself for suspension, expulsion, perhaps even criminal charges. Instead, she found Headmaster Albright reviewing the security footage with a grim, thoughtful expression. "Miss Vance," he said without looking up, "I've been watching this video for the past hour, trying to comprehend what transpired." "I defended myself and another student," Ilara stated simply. "You put 4 students in the infirmary. They put themselves there when they chose to attack someone who could fight back." Headmaster Albright finally looked at her, and Ilara was surprised to see a flicker of something akin to approval in his eyes. "Serafina Thorne has been a persistent issue at this academy for 3 years. Her father's position on the board has regrettably shielded her from consequences. But this," he gestured at the screen, "this changes everything." "Am I expelled?" Ilara asked. "You should be," the headmaster admitted. "But I've reviewed Serafina's disciplinary file, and I've spoken to other students about the pervasive climate of intimidation. What you did was extreme, but what they've been doing is far worse." He leaned back in his chair. "You are suspended for 3 days. Upon your return, you will attend mandatory conflict resolution sessions. And if anything like this happens again, you are permanently dismissed. Understood?" Ilara nodded. It was a far better outcome than she'd dared to hope for. "There's one more thing," Headmaster Albright said. "Leo Finch has requested to see you before you depart." Leo was waiting in the hallway outside the office, his broken glasses replaced with a new, sturdier pair. When he saw Ilara, his face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire demeanor. "Hi," he said shyly. "Hi yourself," Ilara replied. They walked outside together, neither speaking until they reached the parking lot. Finally, Leo broke the silence. "Thank you," he said. "No one has ever stood up for me like that before." "It was the right thing to do," Ilara said. "Besides, they deserved it." Leo laughed, a sound of pure, unburdened joy that made Ilara's heart skip. "Serafina tried to come to school today, but turned around and left when she saw me. Briar and Willow won't even make eye contact with anyone. It's like a completely different place." "Good," Ilara said. "Maybe now other kids won't have to go through what you did." They reached the bus stop, and Leo turned to face her. "I know you're suspended, but when you come back, would you maybe want to have lunch together? I mean, If you don't mind being seen with the Academy's resident weirdo." Ilara studied his face, seeing past the self-deprecating humor to the genuine hope underneath. There was something about Leo that drew her in, a quiet strength and gentleness that was rare in her experience. In a world full of Seraphinas, he was something precious. "You're not weird," she said. "You're kind. And yes, I'd like that very much." Leo's smile could have powered the entire academy. "Really, really," Ilara confirmed. "But I should warn you, I might not be the most popular person to hang out with after this." "I don't care about popular," Leo said. "I care about real, and what you did back there, that was the most real thing I've ever seen." When Ilara returned to Crestwood Academy 3 days later, she found a completely transformed environment. Students who had never acknowledged her before now offered respectful nods in the hallways. Teachers looked at her with a new awareness, and Seraphina Thorne was nowhere to be seen. She found Leo at their usual lunch table, no longer sitting alone. 2 other former outcasts had joined him, and they welcomed Ilara warmly. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. "How was suspension?" Leo asked as she sat down beside him. "Quiet," Ilara admitted. "I had time to think." "About what?" "About you, mostly." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, and she felt her cheeks flush. "I mean, about what you said, about being real." Leo's eyes lit up behind his glasses. "What about it?" "I've spent so long trying to be invisible, trying not to cause trouble. But maybe there's a difference between causing trouble and standing up for what's right." She looked around the cafeteria, noting how the atmosphere had shifted. Students seemed more relaxed, less fearful. "Maybe sometimes you have to fight to protect the things that truly matter." "Like what?" Leo asked softly. Ilara met his gaze, seeing her own burgeoning feelings reflected there. "Like people who are worth protecting." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Ilara realized that everything had changed. Not just the academy, but her understanding of herself. She wasn't just the quiet girl trying to stay invisible anymore. She was someone who would stand up for others, someone who wouldn't let injustice go unchallenged. And for the first time in her life, she was someone who might actually be falling in love. As the weeks passed, Ilara and Leo grew closer. She discovered that beneath his shy exterior was a brilliant mind and a wonderfully dry sense of humor. He found in her not just a protector, but someone who truly understood what it meant to be an outsider. Seraphina Thorne eventually returned to Crestwood, but she was a mere shadow of her former self. Her reign of terror was over, ended by a girl who'd shown her that real strength didn't come from inflicting pain, but from protecting the vulnerable. And in the end, Ilara Vance learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is precisely what everyone tells you not to do. Sometimes you have to fight, not because you seek conflict, but because someone has to. Sometimes the smallest person in the room truly can deliver the biggest blow, especially when they're fighting for something that matters. Most importantly, she learned that love could bloom anywhere, even in the aftermath of a high school battleground, between a fighter and the boy who taught her that some things are worth defending at any cost.